You're listening to Central Illinois Business. Hi, Alex Ruggier here. Welcome to the show. And we have a great one for you this morning, starting out with my good friend, Parham Parastaran. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you very much to be here. Very excited to be here, I should say.
Oh, I am so excited to have you. I'm about to burst because you've come out with a book that really was a revelation. It was for me. In terms of your life and all of the things that you've, gone through and pushed through. And it was a revelation because, I knew you for years. The whole community knew Parham, right? And because you had a string of retail shops and auto business and with the car X's and were high profile in so many ways. Involved in the community.
Events. Yeah, the Crazy K was
in so many ways. And you were on my show back in the day when you had that.
That's when I knew I made it, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
That's when I knew I made it.
But okay. But you wrote this book. Now tell us about the book, and it's called Perfect Pain, which is an intriguing title. So maybe you can tell folks
Well, I'll
about
start
it.
with the title. You know,
Yeah.
I came up with the title before I even wrote the first page of the book.
Really?
Yeah, it just kind of popped into my head, Perfect Pain, and it was just exactly at a time that I was going through something, and I'll describe that in a minute. But the title was clear as day to me, and the book has a message, and the last two chapters are called Perfect Pain 1 and Perfect Pain 2, and it really all comes together and why I called it Perfect Pain, and we can talk about it briefly. But basically the book, my publisher calls it a memoir. I hate using the word memoir because it sort of it makes you think that it's just a book full of stories, and while there's, of course, stories, and I have to provide background to what was going on in my life and how I am here today, but really there's a real message to it. It is inspiring, and the reason it's inspiring and is due to these messages and building up. And I'll just briefly get into that. Basically, it's the story of my struggles with depression, ultimately. And what people, you just started the show by saying, people in Champaign, everybody knew you. You know, you had the Crazy K. I was high profile, and of course I was, because I wanted to be high profile because it was important for me to be high profile. It was good for business, for selfish reasons.
Yes.
I was involved in charity, but I also really cared about a lot of the community that has been very good to me. But what people didn't know was the side of me behind what you just described.
Right.
And that side of me was very dark, and it was very lonely, and it wasn't what you would normally see. Most people
Well, you hit it well.
Most people thought, wow, this guy has everything going on. He's likable, and all of those things, and that I was blessed with to have. Business was good. I thrived in business. I thrived in the community and thrived in a lot of areas. But where I didn't thrive was the most important part, and that was my how I felt, I felt psychologically. And behind the scenes, I was very depressed, suicidal. I had a $1,500 a week cocaine habit, which is pretty hard to describe for people that
very few people could even afford that.
Well, couldn't afford that, but it's hard to believe when I look back. But big substance abuse problems. But I did this all at a secret. I did this all hidden. I did this behind the scenes. I would lock myself up for 2-3 days and do it privately.
And this may sound unbelievable, but I believe it because we had. Every family is touched with things like this. We had a sister-in-law who I knew. She's passed now, but I knew her for 30 years. And found out that she was an alcoholic of the nth degree, and the family said she was a closet alcoholic because none of us knew. And she made a decision one day to change her life, and she basically came out of that closet or whatever, and acknowledged her alcoholism, started going to AA, and was able to get herself off of the drug of alcohol. And she actually lived a pretty clean life for many years before she passed. It was a different thing that caused her to pass away. But it was just like you would never believe. I would just never believe it.
I'd love to hear that.
Yeah.
It is, and it's sadly so true in the United States. Currently, it's escalating. The depression, suicide, substance abuse, these type of basically society killers are expanding at a pretty large rate. If the opioid stuff is a big
that's
deal.
Scary.
What I wanted to talk about in this book was I wasn't the kind of person that was able to just go to AA. It was embarrassing for me, obviously. I didn't want to have this problem. I didn't want to have what was going on. But what I really like to preach and what I like to talk about, what I'm passionate about, is that I was lucky enough to get psychoanalysis. And I went into a very deep level of therapy, 2 to 3 days a week on a couch. 15 years now I've been doing this. Over 1,200 sessions, I think I counted it last, with an amazing psychiatrist in town that's just, he's just terrific. A lot of people know him. But he's just an amazing doctor that just suited me well. And what I got out of that was I went back in time. And the book is talking about that. But I went back in time and really figured out, why am I doing this? Why am I depressed? Why am I, and ultimately, I had deeply poor self-esteem. While the outside world
That's so
thought
hard to believe.
it's hard to believe.
Yeah.
I always bring this up because I was my high school's homecoming king, and the only reason I bring that up is because typically be a homecoming king, you were very well liked, and nobody would have thought that this very popular person would be so deeply sad and lonely and self-esteem and self-confidence so low. But I was. Everything I did materially, from a business standpoint, socially, sports-wise, everything I did for the wrong reasons. I just did it so I can sort of overcome the deeper rooted problems that I had of insecurity. So I came here as an immigrant from Iran. I talk about it in the book, but I came here as an immigrant from Iran during a very difficult time.
Came legally.
Legally, that's right. During it, we actually had political asylum because we came during the revolution, the Islamic Revolution. Right. We weren't Muslim.
We were allies with Iran,
yes,
right?
Until the revolution.
And
right. So we were not Muslim, and so everybody that was in Iran at that time was being tortured, jailed, and whatever. So we escaped and ended up in the United States, and that was during the hostage crisis. So the last thing I wanted to do was tell people, hey, I'm in fourth grade, I'm in California, I'm dark-haired, and my name is Parham Parastaran, and yes, there's hostages in the United States that are in Iran right now. So I hid that. It was very shameful. So one of the first things that I really was battling was overcoming the shame of being an immigrant.
Wow.
And so I played all the American. So I did all the American things. I switched from playing soccer to playing football and basketball and all the American sports. And so that was one of the first things I did. I really tried hard to become popular, to overcome that shame that I felt. So
when you told me that you were an immigrant from Iran, I was a little shocked.
I remember that.
I thought you were second, third generation American because you seemed to me about as American as apple pie.
I even married a blonde woman. I mean, talk about psychoanalysis.
Blonde hair, blue eyes.
I married a blonde woman, and these aren't by accident. And these are the things I learned through psychotherapy, and I really worked at a deeper level on my depression and the whys. And I got so much healthier that I just felt this need to start writing about it. And what I really was trying to accomplish with the perfect pain, and I've had many struggles in life. Obviously the immigrant thing, but I was abused when I was a kid. I was poor when we came to America, struggling, literally struggling. Obviously makes sense because I became an entrepreneur and tried to make as much money as possible. Another completely diametrically opposed thing, but it makes sense. But I really had to figure out why. And when I wrote the book, I was at a time where I really felt like all of the negatives, what we perceive as negatives, were the best thing that ever happened to me. It was perfect. All the pain that I had, from the abuse to the immigrant to the shame to the depression to the unbelievable substance abuse problems, everything that I had truly made me who I am, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. And that's why it's called Perfect Pain. And that's the message as you read the book, and the background stories are your stories, but really it's about the fact that everything that happens to us can be the best thing that ever happened. We just get to have a choice at some point of what, if we put a positive or a negative connotation to it. And through help, I did this through help. I didn't do this on my own and have this revelation, but I really worked through it and got to the point where I realized, holy cow, I am a better human being as a result of being abused when I was a kid. Let's talk about it. I don't have any problem talking about it. You know, and I was poor when I was a kid. Let's talk about that. I don't have a problem talking about it. You know, I was an immigrant and I was very, you know, I felt very ashamed. Let's talk about it. That's okay. And that is who I am. And so it was a path to becoming my most authentic self, and I can't be happier as a result. And I would love people to have that same experience.
Yeah. Well, you know, I'm just, so many things are rushing through my brain, you know, listening to you talk. I mean, the first thing is I see this little boy, you know, coming over from Iran, and I like to think of our country, notwithstanding all of rhetoric going on right now, as a haven for immigrants who come over legally. I am not a proponent of illegal immigration.
Neither am I.
Yeah. But who come over legally, because I have always said, America, I believe this, okay? Call me jingoistic. That is the greatest country in the world.
No doubt.
And the reason is because I think of the freedoms that we have, and because we have some of the best and the brightest have been coming over here for hundreds of years.
Because of the freedom.
Because of the freedom and the philosophy that people can basically make their own destiny. It doesn't always work out, but they have the opportunity. You know, it's just like, you know, the Constitution guarantees us the pursuit of happiness. It doesn't guarantee us happiness, but it guarantees us the opportunity to pursue it, right? And that's what we have here. And as a result, we end up getting some of the brightest people from all over the world, whether that be China or whether that be Mexico or Canada or Iran. And that's why we can say we're the greatest country in the world, because we have the greatest people in the world. And I really believe that.
I do too, and I could really speak for hours about this, but my kid plays middle school softball, and before the game they put we do the national anthem.
Yeah, right.
You know, and when I stand and I do the national anthem, I look at the flag, I put my hand on my, you know, chest, right, and I literally get goosebumps. Yeah. And this is, now we're talking 38 years later that I've been here. I've been here 38 years, and I came here when I was 8 or 9, so about 38 years. But 38 years later, I listened to the national anthem, and the reason I get the chills and the reason I feel the way I do when I do is because I am so proud to be an American. Yeah. And in fact, I'm so offended when people are complaining about it. Now, of course, there's a lot of things we can do better. We always can do better.
Yeah.
But I'd love for people to go inside my body sometimes and know what it feels like, because I wouldn't be here talking to you right now had it not be for America and what it's able to do for me, my family, and whatever. So,
I love it.
Big deal, that conversation. I'll tell you a really quick story.
Well, hold it.
Please.
We're going to take a quick break, and you can pick up with that story as soon as we come back.
Great.
Please don't go away. We're talking with Parham Parastaran. Right back.
Just Parham.
And we're back. You're listening to Central Illinois Business. Alex Ruggier here. I'm with Parham Parastaran, and he says, just call him Parham, but we're talking about this book, Perfect Pain, and we got on the subject of America and what it means to you, what it means to me, and you were telling a story.
Yeah, well, I was telling the story about the thing, but what I was going to tell you a quick story when we were talking about the immigrant thing. When I came here, I was in 4th grade during the Revolution, and I was in 4th grade. I had just started 4th grade, or middle of 4th grade. I moved here in the middle of school, and we were doing art, and we had to draw something. And I drew something that I normally drew as a kid, and the next day they asked me to the office, and I'm in this room with a very nice lady, and I see my drawing sitting on the counter there, and she's asking me all kinds of questions, and asking me about my parents, my father, my mom, my brother, and things like that. And it starts dawning on me then, and she actually told me too, is why they did this is because I drew a picture of people protesting, and the helicopter was flying above the protesters and shooting at them, and there was people laying on the ground with blood and arms missing and things like that. It's just something I did as a 4th grader. Never in my life never did I ever think this was abnormal. I just drew this in art class because this is the kind of stuff I drew.
Yeah.
So it was that day I realized I'm different, because that was really normal to me. And I got called out into office, and they want to know what the heck is wrong with this kid. Do we need to investigate whatnot? And so it's that type of thing that we were talking, and it goes back a little bit to what we're talking about, is that was very normal for me in Iran. That was not an abnormal drawing. It was just something we did. But these are the things that we don't appreciate in America sometimes, and these are the things that, as an immigrant that came here, I appreciate more than a lot of people, because I've lived in other places, I've been to other places, and there's nothing like America.
Yeah.
And kids in America aren't necessarily drawing revolutions and helicopters shooting people from above when they're protesting.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my goodness, what a snapshot.
Yeah.
What an image that conjures. Well, okay, so back to the book.
Yes.
How did you talk about having depression, you talk about having substance abuse, you talk about, and you were able to function, you must have been highly functioning manic depressive or something, because you ran an incredibly successful business and high profile in the community and all of that. At what point was the tipping point for you? I mean, what triggered, hey, I have got to get some help?
Well, there was not one day. It was a cumulative of a bunch of straws that broke the back, or whatever that phrase is.
Yeah.
Really, what it was I all along, while I was even behaving the way I was doing, and with the transgressions I had, all along I knew this wasn't me. I knew I'm better than this. I knew I was going to beat this. I knew that my plan in the world was not this wasn't where I was going, and I just had this problem, and I just kept thinking, I'm going to fix it. But I think what really happened was my family. Mm-hmm. I think having married, and the toll and the damage I was doing to my most amazing wife, Jennifer, who stuck by me throughout this, which is incredible.
I saw pictures of your family, and
I
don't know if it was on Facebook or your website or what, but what a beautiful family you have.
It was the family, the 3 children, and it was like, this is just enough is enough. And it also kind of intersected at the same time, where in psychoanalysis therapy, you don't go one day and then be like, hey, I'm great now. And you don't go 1 year and say, I'm great. You just make little steps. You can't go from having that type of a depression and that level where I was at, to being able to fix it in 1 year. Okay, it took 30 years to get there. Technically, it should take 30 years to fix it. But so there came an intersection between the therapy working really well and really starting to get it, and then also this amazing, thank God, drive that I had, that I am not going to not be a great dad, and I'm not going to be and it was really important to me to be a great dad. It was really important for me, for my kids, to, when they grow up, imagine and be able to say that, my dad was a good man, and my dad made mistakes. My dad's imperfect, but my dad loved us and did everything he can to make sure that he can be the best dad he could for us, and that was important to me, and that was a strong motivation. Great family and friends also helping me.
Yeah,
no question.
Yeah,
it was difficult.
I believe that. Well, what can you say about psychotherapy? I mean, how does it work? I mean, do you sit on a couch?
Yes.
Really?
Well, you lay on a couch, or you can sit, but I was abused as a kid, so I didn't lay on a couch the entire 14 years that I've been. I sat in the chair. I would sit up because my therapist was a male, and I was abused by a male. Yes, so I had a really difficult time, and there's no way I was going to lay on a couch. I talk about that in the book. But you basically, what you're doing in psychoanalysis is no different than you and I really being able to have a deep conversation, but it's really getting to the root of being able to look at yourself with the proper mirror of who you really are. And we struggle with that, right? And if we have really good parents that have raised us very well, you probably are integrated where you see yourself the way you really are, and that's really important. But narcissism, grandiosity, these transitions comes from the fact that our self-esteems are not regulated. And so in psychoanalysis, you're basically stripping down to a very childlike level of who I am, and then sort of rebuilding your strength, rebuilding who you are ultimately, because you weren't who you are. So for example, in my case, my parents, they loved me, but they were limited, and they were not able to, they were immigrants, right? So they didn't say, hey, Parham, be who you are, or whatever. They said, you need to be very successful. You need to get rid of our shame that we feel. They, you live through, they
I've
live
seen
through
it,
so
like the
seen
dragon
this.
mothers,
Yeah.
they talk
so
about
that's not healthy,
in
right?
some cultures,
exactly. So
like,
that's not healthy,
yeah.
right? And that's not healthy. Well, and that's just an example, and that's not healthy. So in psychoanalysis, you're working backwards through that and finding a true love for yourself and a real identity for yourself. And it's a longer process, but for me, it worked. I don't say this is for everybody. Most people I know have a hard time because it's a commitment. It's a real commitment. But there's a lot of ways to get help. The point is to get help. The point is to be self-aware. The point is to if you have friends that love and you have great narcissism and grandiosity, which a lot of business people do, a lot of very successful people do, there's substances of some pain somewhere else. They are overcoming, and they are trying to what's the right word? But I'll think of a second. But basically, they are trying to, exactly. The pain that they had, some form of pain, but ward off. They're trying to ward off some of their issues, and we do these by busying ourselves. We do this by doing things at extremes, whether it's triathletes or I'm going to be the president of the United States. I mean, look at some of our presidents in the past. Not just this one, but just go through all the presidents.
Do they have ego issues or what?
Issues, but they had child issues.
Yeah.
But again, we all do. We all do. And this is what I want to talk about, is that let's talk about it. Men especially are afraid to tell about their feelings, and they're afraid to talk about their insecurities. And I love talking about my insecurities.
Wow. Yeah, and we had lunch the other day, and
Thank you, by the way.
Well, it was wonderful, and I had a great time, but I was amazed at how open you were, and, I welcomed it. I thought it was wonderful, because one of the things that I think is a problem in our society is, when women get together, they're very happy to cry on each other's shoulders and open up, and they tell each other about their problems, and and then they all go away, and it's cathartic. They feel better, and they're closer as friends. Guys doing that? Are you kidding me? No way. And we need more of that, not less. And, I don't want to see people, crying on their sleeve all the time. But, honestly, I think you should buck up, Sparky, a little bit. And that's part of our culture, too.
Yeah.
But I do think the pendulum has swung way too far the other way. And people need to be a little bit more open, a little bit more vulnerable, if you will, for lack of a better description. And I just really felt that. In fact, that's why I turned around and called you after the lunch. I said, this is really, important, and I want to,
my
have
friend,
Parham on this radio show.
I am not sure you could. There's a difference between somebody that you look at that is happy and somebody that is deeply content. Mm-hmm. When I think of what I want to be at some point in the future before I die, or the last things remaining that I want to think about, I want to feel content, because I could make myself happy by traveling and being on a jet, or doing
eating
this,
a chocolate
or
bar,
whatever, or eating or doing a lot of things, right? But I want to be able to sit and see, can I be contained and just content by just being inside my own body? Well, a lot of men, when you're like, to your point with, you don't want people walking around crying. But I truly, truly believe that you can't get to your deepest level of contentment and happiness without being really truthful and candid with yourself about your feelings and who you are, right? And if you suppress too much of that, you'll end up being sort of a machine, right? And that machine to the outside world will look amazingly functionable, right? It will be successful. It has everything that it appears to be like. But what it doesn't have is that when the lights go down, the stage lights, and you exit stage left, that you're not content and at peace. And that peace causes you to want to do more and more and more and more. And then you go for what? If you're doing it for great reasons, listen, I'm your number one supporter. But unfortunately, I see a lot of men doing things for the wrong reasons, for the macho reasons and whatever. And so, yes, I think the world would be a better place if we all just were a little bit more self-aware and think about some of the stuff we do. We definitely will check our egos a little bit, be a little more humble, and lessen the narcissism and grandiosity that we see so much.
Yeah, yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. I was watching the news this morning, and there was a thing. It was a movie star, and he's young, and he's good looking, and he's, award winning, and he's got money all over the place. He's got beautiful ex-wife and 3 kids that he left because he's with this 22-year-old model and all of this stuff. And I'm like, and there's a picture of him with a box of liquor walking into the condo, and I'm just like, you know what? It's not all it's cracked up to be.
It takes a lot of resources to maintain that self-esteem. So you're constantly having to do the next thing, what are we doing tomorrow? What are we doing Friday? Let's plan next week. What are we doing next weekend? And if you find yourself constantly busying up your schedule, constantly needing the next thing, then I suggest take a moment and think about the conversation that we're having now and figure out a path so you don't have to constantly feel like you need that next thing.
Yeah. Oh, this is great stuff. We could go for an hour long. The book is called Perfect Pain. The author is Parham Parastaran, and my friend, you've done a lot to help a lot of people. Thanks for your work on this.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, and it's always a pleasure to talk to you, and it was great catching up with you.
Yeah,
it really is.
Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.